Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on AIS's mini video series on Applied Generative AI. Today, we're going to talk about preparing for Microsoft 365 Copilot that just went generally available a few days ago. My name is Chris Poteet. I'm a solution director at AIS who focuses on modern work, particularly content management solutions in the enterprise. So, preparing for M365 Copilot has a few basic tenets that Microsoft has put out, plus our own recommendations on top of it. The first and perhaps most important aspect of it is the information design and security and compliance posture that your tenant has to be ready for M365 Copilot. What's important to remember is that even though Copilot experiences are new, the endpoints, meaning Office, SharePoint, Teams, etc., those are not new in terms of the endpoints for those experiences, but also the controls that go into managing Copilot are the same that they've been for as long as you've worked in Microsoft 365. And so there are a few things to refresh yourself and assess your maturity on to make sure that you're ready for it. Because Copilot, as a generative AI solution, is still a search solution. And we'll talk a little bit more about the semantic index here in a second. So, the first thing, make sure your information architecture is set up in a proper way to promote good knowledge repository creation and generation, as well as collaboration and usage. So, making sure that those pieces are there. It's been the same for almost 20 years and it's still the same today. So, make sure your information architecture is set up in a place to make sure that your content is retrievable, usable, and findable. Next thing is addressing oversharing or any security concerns, and doing that by ensuring that you're auditing security in these information containers. So things like who has access to your SharePoint sites, Teams membership, and M365 groups, of course. All those pieces make sure that they are set up in the proper way. You can use the tenant administration to configure that to check this out. In the active site list, you can also use PowerShell to retrieve more robust reports to investigate it. And you can even look at more advanced tools such as the recently released SharePoint Advanced Management. Although premium licensing is required, it does provide you tools to address oversharing, sensitivity label application, lifecycle management, etc., as well as third-party tools that you may want to look at to do this as well. And then the last thing is, depending on your maturity, making sure that your purview, security, and compliance is in a good state. So you have configured improper data loss prevention, security labels, retention, etc. And you can use the Activity and Content Explorer inside of Purview to see where your current implementation is at, and also assess and making sure that maybe you need to augment that more, and making sure that your posture in Purview is set up well to address oversharing and other types of security issues that may derail your Copilot rollout. Second thing is your technical prerequisites. So first of all, you have to have the Copilot license, which you'll have to procure with those requirements in Microsoft. Ensure that those users that are using it have at least an E3 or an E5 along with an Entra account. And that's probably already the case today for most of the users in your tenant, as well as access to most of the common applications with that at least E3. So OneDrive, Teams, SharePoint. But several of the experiences in M365 Copilot are limited to newer applications. So, for example, if you want to use Copilot in Outlook, you have to have the new Outlook for Windows, not the current Win32 one. So if you haven't rolled that out, it's something to start considering, as well as Microsoft Loop. If you haven't rolled that out as well, that also went to general availability. Consider rolling that out to get those Copilot experiences in the exciting new Loop app. And of course, but certainly not least, is your OCM standpoint and posture for making sure this is successful. Because at the end of the day, no matter how great your technical solution is, if it's not being used and well managed through change management channels, it's not going to deliver any value to your organization. So ensuring that you're in a place where things like your communication strategy are ready for launch. You're communicating the benefits and on all those nuanced communications and channels to make sure it's clear why Copilot will affect their day-to-day work. Obviously, training is something there, and ensuring your support teams exist. So building up things, for example, like a repository of prompts, for example, when you look at your search and intelligence dashboards in M365, to get an insight into what people are looking for. It helps to build those early prompts and start training around those things and catering that so people can find the information that they need. There are also new experiences such as Copilot Lab, which includes a lot of out of the box materials to train end users, but also suggestions on how to do prompt engineering. That is limited to when you have a Copilot license, but it's also something to consider to roll out through your OCM strategy. Of course, governance still remains something very important today. to make sure that your M365 environment is in a proper state on that. And then consider a COE for all your generative AI efforts, such as Copilot, but also GitHub Copilot, Power Platform Copilot, OpenAI, etc., making sure those are in alignment with your business objectives. Finally, one thing to consider is, do you want to extend the Copilot experience? So new to Copilot is the Semantic Index. For a long time, we've had the Query Index, which is what, when you go and make a search in any M365 application, it goes against that and returns data from M365 that you have access to. But now we have the Semantic Index, which is an AI-tuned, semantic-aware version of a query index. And so it's available in several different applications, and even default search gets significantly better with a Copilot license. But the M365 Copilot primarily interacts with the Microsoft Graph and the Semantic Index to return answers to those prompts. So you may want additional data sources inside your Semantic Index, such as a file share or ServiceNow. There are a bunch of first-party and third-party solutions there, as well as an SDK to build custom ones for any line of business application you want to include in Copilot experiences. And then consider plugins. The great thing about this is it uses models like Teams messaging extensions and Power Platform connectors to do things like retrieve information from a third-party system and not just retrieve it, but give actions back to them, such as creating tickets in Jira or interacting with other types of systems as well as supporting OpenAI plugins. The vast library of plugins that are available will also plug into M365 Copilot. So extending the semantic index, whether through plugins or external data, is another important consideration of your preparation for M365. Thank you for joining us on this short overview. There are additional materials provided by Microsoft, of course, and AIS continues to push out more materials to help you be prepared and be successful. Thank you for joining us today, and let AIS know if we can help you in your Copilot journey.